Welcome to another edition of the brand called You. Today I have a very, very accomplished lady, Arti Jaiman, on the show. Arti, welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
Arti is the station director of Gurgaon Ki Awaaz Radio, which is a community radio station. She's the founder of Pitara.com, which is a children's website, and she's a journalist by training. So, Arti, tell me a little bit about your early life.
Childhood.
A little bit, why not?
So again, I grew up in a very middle class home in Delhi. I'm born and brought up in Delhi, and it's my father was an engineer who I think within a few months of getting married shocked my mother by saying I want to set up my own electronics business. And we my mother, she went on, she's a teacher. And so my father set up this business, and we grew up in South Delhi. And before that, Karol Bagh in Barsati. And there were both of us and my brother and me. And I went to school in Delhi. I went to Loreto. And then I went to college in Delhi. I went to Hindu college, did my English honors. And after that, since I loved writing, and the joke in the family was that I wrote letters to everybody, including my mother's school friends. They used to say that, she keeps in touch with us and you don't. And so my mother prompted me that, maybe you should make a career out of it since you write so much. And so I went to Indian Institute of Mass Communication, did journalism, and then joined Economic Times. And I started working for the arts pages of the Economic Times. And this was in 1990, 91. So that was the start.
Wonderful. So let's come to Gurgaon Ki Awaaz. Tell me a little bit about this radio station and what made you start it.
So the community radio, it's a community radio station which in other parts of the world is also known as low power FM, which means it's a 50-watt radio station, reaches a radius of maybe 10 kilometers and focuses on a very geographically local community, in this case Gurgaon. And within that also we've sliced it further, where we say that we don't look at the English speaking community of Gurgaon, people like us. Our focus is local villagers and migrant workers, which is hundreds of thousands, And so we started this, the NGO that started it. So the NGO was founded by my father. And he has always had this thing of that I have been very fortunate in life and I want to give back. So he, many years ago, he had started this NGO working in schools. And he's always loved radio. And so when the policy opened up, he said, let us apply, And he has this habit or a bad habit of saying, why not? Any opportunity, anything. Instead of thinking, how will we do this? We know nothing about it. He's like, why not? Let's jump into it. And I was not involved with the NGO, but he asked me and a friend of mine, Chitra, if we could help them fill out the application form and write out everything. And we said, yeah, sure. And at that time, both of us were working on the Pitara content. And so we just researched and we filled it out and promptly forgot about it. And the next thing we knew, Home Ministry was doing their visits, checking out. And then we were called to the ministry for a screening committee meeting. And then again, we were asked that since you filled it out, can you go? And we said, yeah, sure, why not? Because I also seem to have inherited that bad habit of saying, why not? And we went there and it was quite intimidating and we kind of did all that. And next thing we knew that the NGO got a letter saying you're getting a license.
Wow.
And that's when I was asked that would I like to lead it? Because I was not involved in it. And it helped. I was 40 then. And I realized that I was not scared of failure at that age, And I felt that even if it completely tanks, it's okay.
Correct.
But not giving it a shot, I would regret it.
Correct. Wonderful. And what is the content of this channel?
So we broadcast 22 hours a day. Out of which 16 hours is music, which is not Bollywood music. It's all folk music from the communities that we broadcast for. So it is Haryanvi music, Bhojpuri music, Maithili music, Garhwali, Kumauni, Bagheli, Bundeli, all the dialects of North India. And even like going a little into East India. And a lot of the music comes from the communities,
Okay.
from singing groups, mandlis,
Yeah.
from the community who come to the studio, record, or they give us their recordings. And the purpose is that, this is a community radio station which is for the community and
Correct.
of the community.
Correct.
So if it doesn't represent their language and their voices, then what is it doing? And if today our listeners feel a sense of that this is ours, it's because that it sounds like them, and the rest of the hours is talk radio.
Okay. And when in the section about the talk radio, do you work with any challenges the community faces?
Everything. So for us, every aspect of their lives is important to us.
Okay.
Now, whether we have the resources to focus on it is a different matter.
Correct.
But for example, health is a big issue because you're looking at a community that cannot afford to go to private healthcare. So they end up either going to the government health services, which is the primary healthcare centers of the civil hospital, or they go to quacks, And so that is a big area that we work on using the radio. And it works very well because people are able to call in and talk to the doctor and ask questions. Sometimes the ones which they are a little shy about or embarrassed about, because there's no visual. So they can talk anonymously. Livelihood is a big area for us.
Okay.
So because you're looking at, again, workers who are looking for jobs or who are looking for vocational training courses for their children, which will get them jobs. And since that was a big focus area for the NGO, that program migrated to radio completely.
Okay.
And it continues to stay a big focus for us. And we do continue to partner with other organizations that are working on the ground in skill training and trying to use their expertise in getting at least the soft skills part of the training onto radio.
Okay.
And information, like what are the jobs available, when can you apply, how do you write a CV out, how do you present yourself for an interview, because you are looking at people who have come from the villages straight into Gurgaon.
Correct.
Now they're looking for jobs in offices and they're not aware of the culture and what you need to do to be presentable and to get that job.
Right.
So livelihood is a big area, local governance, environment, waste, water, sanitation, everything, and also mental health, adolescence. Mental health has become a huge thing for us because the kind of stresses that our community goes through, that women go through, that even men go through, also the separation from their home, which is their emotional base. They're living far away from home, they're living in tenements. All that radio becomes a great way to deal with that.
I agree. And it's probably a medium that reaches out to every single human being.
Absolutely. See, FM is free to air. There's not even an internet charge you need. Your phone can become a brick because your balance ran out, but your FM will work.
I see.
And we have listeners who listen to us for 10, 12 hours, and we ask them, like, how do you listen? And they're working on, maybe in a factory. We have listeners calling from the Maruti factory saying, I listen to you through the night. So what they do is they keep the phone in their pocket and they have earleads on. And as they're working, the radio is just playing.
Wow.
And radio is a medium that allows you to do something else and continue to listen to radio, whether it's men or women.
Amazing. And how are the millennials? And then millennials, this is the world of millennials. I know Gen Z is coming up now. But how are the millennials in your catchment area adapting to radio?
See, they listen to radio, they call it FM.
Okay.
So that was a learning for us, around 11 years ago, when I remember going to these villages doing needs assessment, and I would ask 500 people, do you listen to radio? They said no. And then I asked a guy, I said, but you're listening to music. Where is it playing? He said, oh, this is FM. So the language has changed,
Correct.
And so they listen to FM. Definitely, you do see the young, college going kids, because a lot of their mobile packs include a free subscription to, any of the internet-based music listening apps, whether it's a Savan or a Wink or a, whatever they are, Spotify, I guess. So there is this thing of that you can listen to on-demand music, but since radio is also about discovery, you do hear them listening to it as they're traveling around.
Correct.
But you do see that they are plugged in more to Bollywood,
Yeah.
and we see that shift happening. For example, in family weddings, they don't want to listen to the old traditional Sangeet songs, where a woman is sitting with a dholak, another with a chammach, and then the songs are being sung, the Banna Banni songs, and they just want their, Bollywood Sangeet songs, and they're preparing their numbers to it. But in the process, one is also losing an entire cachet of culture, which their grandmothers and aunts and mothers have.
I agree.
But it's going.
Fantastic. I agree. So one more question on Gurgaon Ki Awaaz before I move to Pitara. And since you touch the lives of so many thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, what is the mechanism for an individual to reach out to you if they have a challenge?
So the way our listeners reach out to us is by phone.
Okay.
So we have a landline which is open in office hours 9 to 5. People call us. We have 2 numbers that go into the live studio, which when live broadcast is not happening, it goes into a recording service.
Okay.
So they can record their message 24 hours. So we do have a lot of listeners reaching out to us and saying that, I have this problem, or my area, my locality has this problem, there's a broken road, or, garbage is not being picked up, or a health crisis is kind of brewing. And we do 2 things, we don't encourage listeners to take the monkey from their shoulder and dump it on our back, which they try.
Right.
That we've told you that there's a problem in Kaparsheda village or Mullaheda village. Now you do something. So what we do is we arm them with the helpline numbers of Municipal Corporation of Gurgaon or Eco Green, which is the company that is supposed to pick up garbage, that here is the number. And this is how you have to give the complaint. You have to give a complaint. You have to take a token number. This is how you'll follow up. And in 1 week, if nothing happens, then get back to us. And then we'll try and escalate it,
Okay.
So we find that seems to work well. We also, what we do is if we feel that somebody is giving a very serious complaint, which is, say, in an area, then reporters go out and report it. So that we can send that report to a concerned authority, also as evidence that,
Correct.
this is a huge issue about to blow up, and can you please act? Because we don't work in traditional media in the way of traditional media of oppositional to the local government. Our effort is that can we use media to amplify the concerns of the local community, and because we have a reach to the local government, can we get the exact person who's responsible for it to act on it?
Okay.
Because very often the community doesn't know, am I supposed to go to Municipal Corporation of Gurgaon or to GMDA or PWD or who, And so we try to also unravel all the multiple authorities that look after things in
Well,
Gurgaon.
that's a huge service to the community.
Yeah.
Because most people probably don't know who to go to.
Yeah. Very often we don't. So then we start researching,
Yeah, I agree. So let's move, Arti, to Pitara.com.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about Pitara. I know it's a children's website. What do you do?
So Pitara was founded by my husband in, oh good heavens, which year? 1996 is when he started it. And
That
as
was a long time, even before the
it
dot-com
was
boom.
the first children's website in, I think, the country.
Wow.
And as most startups very often do, it was triggered by a personal need that was felt, which in our case was our son was 2 years old, and he gets to the age where you want him to have access to lots of books that he can read, and we wanted him to have access to books which were Indian, where the context was Indian, where children were possibly eating mangoes and amrud rather than scones and strawberries, and we've grown up with that. I mean, I've grown up reading Enid Blyton's and thinking that stuffing chocolate in your pocket is very cool, but it doesn't work in India.
Correct.
So fortunately, because of my work in the arts pages of Economic Times, I was familiar with the Children's Book Trust, National Book Trust, and Tulika, Tara, the children's book publishers, because many of them were using amazing illustrators for their books. And so I kind of reached out to them And we started looking at NBT books, CBT books for our son. And my husband said that this is so unfair that parents who are looking out for material which is Indian or stories which are Indian can't find them. And you did have a problem of just the print quality of National Book Trust books being very poor, which was also driven by keeping the cost low. They wanted the people to be able to buy an 8 rupee book, which makes a lot of sense. So, and he's a tech person. So he started programming and he created this website. And we reached out to the National Book Trust and CBT and Tara. And National Book Trust was very generous in not only giving us access to the books, but they used to have a little journal, like a newsletter, which had little stories. And they said, feel free. And we really started from that. Many stories that my husband used to tell our son, which he finally wrote down, said, okay, fine, let me write it down. And we got an illustrator to illustrate them. And that's how Pitara started.
Amazing.
And then we started putting in more information that we felt that should be, contextualized for children and given to them, whether it's information about science, about the world around them, whether it was coloring pages, whether images at least should be from the environment that the kids are growing up, rather than an environment they've never seen.
That's amazing. I mean, we've all grown up listening to some amazing stories from our own country. And I didn't know there was something like Pitara.com. Of course, my children are much older.
Yeah.
But I find there has always been this gap in the stories that I heard, even whether it was Ramayana or Mahabharata, or even the characters Alha Udar, which, which have been there in my mind. So, are you creating a reservoir of all the old stories that are there?
It's mixed, So one was that we're all aware of the stories of the Panchatantra and the Jatak, and of course you had the Amachitra Kathas, which were reaching out to kids of our age as well as our children. But a lot of the contemporary Indian stories were missing, And we were kind of looking at, is it possible to have the Panchatantra and the Jatak tales? So we had a separate section called folk tales. And then there was fiction, which was contemporary stories. So if it's a child in a city or a village, but it's contemporary India, where there will be maybe a bus or a scooter or this or that. And so that a child who's reading it identifies, this is a child like me, or this is a child, say even if he's in a village, but he is in a village that I have a mental picture of,
It's fascinating.
And because then we extended it to also bringing in stories from other Asian countries, folk tales from other countries, not just the subcontinent, but even Southeast Asia.
And all these, are you planning to do something more with these stories? You get into animation, get into...
Now, I think especially when I started working in audio, I was very keen to take kind of that huge bank that we have and make it available to children in an audiobook format, Now, how for the new generation, which is now they have a device in their hand, maybe from the time they're born, literally, how does one present that content is something I think my husband Ajay would have to look at, because I'm not the tech person. I'm very much the person, the content person, the written word or now the spoken word. But how it can be delivered in a new format
and exciting for the young children.
Exciting for young children is something, I think that occupies his mind.
Very interesting. So let's move to the next part. Next question would be on gender balance. And I ask this from all our lady guests. There's a lot of talk that goes on in India that we must have gender balance. And yet we know that there is a big gap that still exists.
Yeah.
What would your views be on correcting this gender imbalance in our country?
I think it goes to, one is that the changes that have to happen in the family itself.
Correct.
The kind of opportunities one gives to daughters and the expectations one has, Like if I take my own example, I had my mother's role model where she expected me to have a career.
Mm.
Not having a career was not an option.
Correct.
So for her, it was not acceptable if I was just well educated and my goal in life was to marry and have kids. That was not enough.
Correct.
She did want me to have a career, to have an identity, have something I'm proud of, work I'm doing. And of course also wanted me to, have a family.
Correct.
And, all that.
Correct.
And I think that makes a big difference. So that changing that narrative about what one expects from daughters, and I think also when you do it in a family, the son is also getting affected.
Correct.
Because the son also is learning without being told that this is normal. That as there are expectations of me that I will have a career, there are expectations of my sister that she will also have
Correct.
a career.
Correct.
That the girl is not, her role in life is not to prop up the career of the man,
But
And
have
I
a career of her own.
have a career of her
Absolutely.
own if she chooses
Correct.
to,
Absolutely.
because when it comes to work, like now I'm an employer, we hire people. We are all women right now.
Yeah.
So as a matter of choice, if I have two candidates coming and they're both equally qualified and they have the skills that I'm looking for, I always pick a woman.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
And I feel that needs to be done
Correct.
till we reach a place where it becomes normal for men to see women working around them, and it becomes a very matter of fact,
Correct.
everyday occurrence.
Wonderful. So, Arti, let me ask you now a few questions about you personally. And this is the last segment of our discussion. You've been a successful journalist, you've run a radio, you've done so much work with Pitara and children, and you're constantly doing newer and newer things. Over the years, have you had any people who have had an influence over your life? And if yes, what have you learned from them?
I think the biggest influence is my father.
Okay.
Because he has this attitude of taking on challenges, and even if he is not completely equipped with the skills to take on that challenge, but to take it on with a sense of, and to bring people in to handle it, to work with other people.
Correct.
So, and this whole thing of, and also embracing failure, which I've learned from him. Like he has this phrase, he always says, we call it his takiya kalam, that heavens will not fall. And I remember once I kind of completely flipped out before an exam. And I studied through the night because I just felt, I'm not remembering. And I got up in the morning and I was totally, fried out. And he just took me for a walk and he said, at most what will happen? You will fail this exam. Heavens will not fall. And I think there are very few parents who would tell that to a child.
Correct.
And one has internalized it from him so much. And now the youngsters who work in the radio station tell me, ma'am, you always say that try something new because heavens won't fall. And I find that I tend to repeat what he says.
Okay.
So he's really been that influence where he's always supported me in whatever I'm doing and taught me that failure is okay.
Wonderful. So my next question is, what would be the 3 words that define Arti?
I believe I'm talkative,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I am empathetic
Okay.
to other people. And I'm nosy.
Okay.
That's
a new one. I've not heard
I'm
this one.
curious.
Okay.
I'm nosy about your life. And even as you're asking me questions, I'm actually thinking about what your life has been like.
Okay. That's interesting. So my next question is on failure. I know you just spoke about failure. But this is a subject that I'm doing a lot of work on personally because I have a book coming on it. And I've always said that Indian parents, particularly, don't teach their children that it's okay to fail. And I think your dad has been an exception probably in this one. And that manifests itself in our behavior patterns. My
Yeah.
car must be right on at the front of traffic light.
Yeah.
In an aircraft, I must be the first to get off, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. So my question to you is that what have been some of your learnings from some of your mistakes or your failures?
I think Pitara went through that boom bust cycle, of the VC funding and things like that. And that was a very unknown world for both of us. And I think one of the biggest learnings from that is that when you do something you love, and when you work with people whom you really admire and you enjoy working together, even if the initiative that you've got into fails, it doesn't matter. You do feel hurt initially. You feel that loss, that you wanted something to be built, which you had a dream of. But because you were doing what you loved, and because you were working with people you loved working with, and you really respected and admired, the journey itself is a success.
Okay.
That larger failure or smaller failure doesn't matter, So what you remember, this is, how many years ago? This is like 15, 16 years ago. What you remember is the journey, That failure doesn't become so important, And I think that is something that has stayed with me, that I want to do. I want to work with people I love working with, and I love collaborating. So then if the collaboration fails, it doesn't matter, because just working with those people was a learning.
Correct. So my last question to you. Do you have any regrets?
Do I have regrets? Not really. No, because I also feel that as much as we make decisions and we choose paths as we're going along, some of it is meant to be. And I also I find that my work is such that I work with such a large community, and I come across stories of such enormous sadness also, but also people living with such hope despite the sadness in their lives, that when I look at them, I cannot bring myself to regret anything, because it seems so small, it's meaningless. So I just feel happy.
Wonderful. Arti, thank you very much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you.
It's a pleasure.
And I wish you lots of success.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for The Brand Called You. Thank you, and see you next week.